Welcome back to Man Across the New Horizons. I'm Dear Darling. As we see what's going on on our lovely island of Fawnhollow today. TJF, we rolled around to a weekend once again. Got any plans? Anyone? You know, I don't know why I'm just like asking you in general, but you know, UK is another bank holiday on Monday, which is wild. We've had so many bank holidays so recently. So, you know, it's a long weekend this weekend. If you've got any plans, then, you know, have fun with it. A friend's birthday, that's not how you phrase that sentence. A friend has her birthday this weekend, so that would be what I'll be probably celebrating on whatever day we do stuff on. So anyway, hello everyone. Right now in Fawnhallow at 6:12 p.m. on Friday, May 26, 2023. But apart from that, what are we going to talk about today? We can talk about, I mean, there's like a Gollum video game that's been released. I don't know, which people seem to be sort of memeing because it looks like really bad and is buggy. I'm not really sure. To be honest, I'm not even sure really where it came from. I'm not like I was going to say a huge Lord of the Rings fan or anything. I don't have anything particularly against it. It's just, you know, as I say with these sort of things, is because I didn't really, well, actually, I did kind of read the books now I think about it in my youth. I don't know. I didn't like latch onto the sort of, it's Lord of the Rings medieval fantasy. Maybe. I'm not really sure. I always tend to prefer high fantasy compared to medieval fantasy for, I don't know, to be honest. I don't think I could adequately explain it. It's just one of those sort of things where it's just like, yeah, it's just literally my preference, you know. Why do you prefer, like, you know, the colour green to the colour red or something? Literally got no clue. You can be like, oh, it invokes, like, you know, calm, refreshing feelings compared to red, which feels angry or whatever. But on the other flip side, you can be like, oh, red makes me think of passion and emotion and excitement and energy compared to green, which is much more sluggish and, you know, generic or something like that. You know, green is not a creative colour, in the infamous words of a notepad, which I once spoke to. It's sometimes it's quite difficult, you know, to really, I'm not sure advocate is the right word, but express why certain things are things you like, right? I always feel like it's easier to do it with like things with media properties and that sort of things. You know, why do I like Undertale? You know, for example, why is it my favorite video game? Because I think it does a fantastic job of blending both gameplay and story all in together into one package while being, you know, quite subversive at the same time, and you know, engaging you through, you know, fantastic music, and you know, the visuals are also quite nice as well, the designs. With a nice layer of comedic humour over the top of it. You know, that's easy to say, but then it's just like, if you break it down even more, it's like, ooh, why do you like indie RPGs? Well, you know, then it starts to get a bit more vague, because I suppose you're not referring to something in particular. I'm like, I tend to prefer indie RPGs because they tend to be quite story focused and atmosphere based, with a strong focus on characters and maybe a bit of subversion in there, with their sort of like unique humour and charm, which doesn't have to subscribe and necessarily to AAA practices. So they can afford to push the boundaries a little bit more, and they tend to more align with the things I like. And you're like, okay, why do you like stories? And it's like, I like stories because I don't know. Like, why do you like stories as opposed to like gameplay, or as opposed to like visuals or something in a priority? It's like, because I like stories more than the others. Like, I like listening to tales, and maybe you could be like, oh, it's like a translational property because I like to hear stories like from friends and that sort of thing, and people's like life experiences is like, I don't know, maybe you can go like super high level, being like, I feel like it's a great unifier in the world or something, because it's you know, everyone's got their own story to tell, and because of like, you know, 7 billion people in the world, 7 billion different stories, it sort of feels like a way of unifying people across, you know, all sorts of, you know, gaps from like cultural differences to age differences, etc, etc, etc. But you know, that it's not like you particularly think about on like a conscious level, right? You know, it almost feels sort of like what's the word, performative to say that's, you know, why I prefer stories or something, right? It's not like I'm sitting there being like, oh, you know what, this, you know, like playing Night in the Woods or something. It's like, oh, this story is so good, and I love appreciating this because it makes me feel like I'm united with all the people in the world as we all face the different difficulties and problems together by sharing our own experiences. If we can collectively work through them together or something. It's like, no, of course I'm not thinking anything like that. I'm just like thinking like, wow, this is a fun game or something. Which, if anything, is one of humanity's greatest weaknesses, is the inability, I suppose, to express emotions properly in such in a way that they can be intensely captured or conveyed to a different person. Which you might, you know, now I think about it, not necessarily a weakness. Short's, I suppose, a weakness in a literal sense where, like, I don't know, if you're like a not an archaeologist, an archivist or something, being like, hey, I want to note down exactly what like happiness feels like in specific scenarios or specific people, then you're like, okay, you can't do it perfectly. But if anything, I suppose the fact that there is room for people to inject their own experiences and for things to be interpreted different ways to merge together allows every single, conversation about it to feel much more personal and personalized to you, because everyone's one is subjective, which is both good and bad. Because speaking about this, I guess it's going to be one of those philosophical episodes we have today. I don't know which episodes are people's favorites. Is it anecdotal ones, philosophical ones, educational ones? Who knows? But it's sort of like, I don't know how to properly put this, but it would be cool to be able to feel what other people's happiness, sadness, anger felt like, the same way that it's like we probably don't see the world in exactly the same way. While we do interpret this, see the same colours. If I see red, maybe my red is your green is my blue, etc., things like that. While despite the fact that we absorb the same wavelengths, I suppose, we have the same overlapping visible spectrum, the way our brain can interpret it and display it, I suppose, in our mind's eye is different, or possibly different. It's not something you can really know, because then it's like, how would you find it out? You had to swap your brain, I guess, for someone else. But even then, it might be the brain which is intrinsic to the process of like color creation in your head. So it's like you had to swap souls with someone, and it's like, what does that even mean? It's not exactly the most feasible thing in the world, I would argue. But if you found a way, then hit me up. Or if you're Manaphy, then get back into Pokemon Diamond or Pearl. I don't know what game I'm talking about here, but yeah. Well, actually, technically, isn't like Shadows of Our Might or something? The Pokemon Rangers game. You had to play that game, and then you could get the Manaphy egg in Pokemon Diamond or Pearl. I remember I did that. I gave my sister the Manaphy, that's what I remember. Because it was like one of her favourite Pokemons or something. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. What was I going to say was, I don't know. I don't even know if I had anything interesting to say, to be honest. Yeah, but extrapolating that further, I don't think it's unreasonable to assume that not all experiences are necessarily felt intrinsically in the same way. Because you might be like, okay, think about your happiest moment, or one of like something which makes you super happy. Maybe you met a friend which you haven't met for a long time, you do an activity which you really love, you eat some food or something which you find delicious, or something like that, or someone says something really nice to you. By the way, you're looking super cute today. Something like that which makes you particularly happy. How does that intrinsically feel to you? And I don't mean in a robotic way, beep boop, what does happiness feel like? I cannot feel emotions. Of course I can feel emotions, but I don't even know how to describe how happiness feels to me. Because I feel like the only way you can properly convey it, or it's not even properly convey it, but you can even give it a sense of conveying it, is through like artistic language, you can't really describe it very scientifically, I suppose, maybe like a lightness in your heart, like as a physical sensation, or like, the worries and stress and anxiety which feels like a pressure in your brain is just like released, or something like that. Like maybe that's how you describe happiness or something, and it's a little bit difficult. But then I feel like, strangely enough, and this is where art, I suppose, comes in. Like the only way you can really convey it properly is through the expression of art. But even then, it's not quite getting at what I want, When someone expresses like something is like, this is showing what like true bliss or happiness looks like, they might paint like an emotional art piece or something, conveying those emotions through their use of colour, through their use of like technique and medium or something like that. It can all convey this feeling, which is totally fine. I'm not meant to be disparaging that at all. That I think is awesome, but I don't think it's necessarily the same as what I'm trying to drill down into. But annoyingly, they both ask the same question of like, what does this feel like what does happiness feel like? Let's just stick with happiness for now, for the sake of conversation. What does happiness feel like? I feel like doing it through an artistic medium is more like, expressing it like you would to a robot, like you were teaching someone what emotions were. But that's not what I want. I know what emotions are. I know what emotions feel like to me, but like, I guess what I'm trying to be like, what does emotions feel like? What does happiness feel like to you. And that's kind of where I'm just like, yes, you can express that in an artistic, in a like poetic sort of way, but I feel like it's sort of, not that it misses a point, but it doesn't really answer the question. It feels like it answers a different question, if you get what I mean. It feels like it's answering that question of an explanation to a robot rather than the explanation to the human trying to convey the same feel and experiences. Instead, the only way we can do it is like through a translation of a medium of, oh, we had to translate it to like art, and then it's like, oh, what feelings do I get from that art? I would translate that into my head as internalizing, yes, that's what happiness feels like to you or something. Again, it's like, you know, things like that get sort of like lost in translation. I don't know if that really drills down and nails the point of what we're going for. Who knows? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. This is like one of those unanswerable questions of the universe. Except for, it feels strange to call these sort of things unanswerable, because there's such things which are so grounded in our reality, you know? But like, there's unanswerable questions of the universe, which, you know, come from a scientific standpoint. You might be like, whoa, super, what can you do? You might refer to, if you're very mathematically minded, is it Gödel? Gödel's incompleteness theorem, where it's like, oh, you know, you can't prove everything, or something like, that's like paraphrasing, I can't even remember it all that well. I don't remember logic and theory all too well. But like, not with some set of axioms or whatever, you can prove that not everything can be provable or something. So some things will just forever remain a mystery, or maybe you might think of things on a more like cosmic scale, being like, is there other life forms as we understand life to be out there? Do they exist? I mean, it's not technically unanswerable, but it feels sort of cosmically unanswerable. For at least we don't. Are we going to answer that question within humanity's lifespan? And I'm going to, perhaps pessimistic, I'm going to say no. You know. I don't think we are, you know, the vastness of space seems too great. But yeah, again, people were probably saying that with loads of other things. They were like, oh, you know, the Earth is far too large. We could never, you know, travel to the other side in less than a day or something. You know, I'm saying the same thing, I suppose, but on like a cosmic sense. Be like, well, the universe is too far. We'll never get to the edge of the universe within, you know, within a human like lifespan or something. Then maybe something gets invented and suddenly it is possible. I don't know. Probably not in my lifetime, I would imagine, but I mean, that'd be crazy if it wasn't my lifetime, to be honest. And we'll just have to be, I suppose, content with being in the history books, I suppose, of the people of that generation who study us in the future. But yeah, it's weird to say like, how do other people experience life or experience things in general, full stop? It feels weird to say that's a bit of an unanswerable question. And perhaps it even isn't unanswerable, is it weird? I guess it's like unconfirmable sort of question. It's not unanswerable, because of course you can just be like, hey, this is how I experience life, this is how things feel to me in one avenue or another, and maybe it does translate well, maybe you do understand what they're going for, but maybe it doesn't translate properly to exactly how they feel things compared to how you feel things, or how you've interpreted how they feel things, I should say. Which is nothing wrong with that, but it's weird, isn't it? Because it's like, it's so basic, I suppose, compared to the scale of the other things, you know, the mathematical ones is, you know, through rigorous proof, and it's diving deep into axioms and formal logic and theory and proofs. You make the extraction that yes, this is not something which can ever be solved, and then like on a cosmic level it's like, okay, that's like literally kind of like the limits of human physicality, of like technology, etc, etc. It's weird to say that, hey, you know, this other thing, which is a very simple question, which, you know, even like 3-year-olds could probably understand, it's also like not answerable, or not confirmable, I should say. Isn't that weird? Am I the only one who thinks that's weird? Maybe. But I've yet to see Buzzernut Smart Bullet. Okay. I was just looking at the things we have. I think what we can probably do is we can buy some medicine, one for Biscuit, because he needs it. Yeah, because like, in the same vein of, you know, like colours being felt differently, etc, etc. So we spend 4,000. Let's buy 2 more of these, because we're actually a bit low on bells on hand, not in the ABD. It feels a bit strange to be, no, sorry, not strange. In the same vein of being like, your red might be my blue, etc. Why isn't your happiness might be like my sadness? I know then you can sort of appeal to like biological things, being like, oh, different not metabolisms, like different like hormones or whatever are released during it, or like endorphins or lack thereof. You know, the biological responses are very different, I suppose, from a comparison of happiness and sadness, say. But that doesn't mean that necessarily it's intrinsically felt differently or similarly, right? At least I don't think that's something you could argue, or I don't think that's something you could prove, shall I say. It's, as I said, it seems unprovable, but maybe it's not. I don't really know. Yeah, I don't know what else I was going to say about this. I guess that's just sort of life. Which, I'm not really going to cast any... What's the word? Not theories, I suppose, or whether that's good or bad necessarily, you know. Is it good that we'll have these unanswerable questions for the rest of our life, you know? Because I don't think that's something you could say with much certainty. Maybe in the future we'll be like, whoa, we've created a machine which perfectly mimics the different experiences that people feel, and then, you know, they'll hook the first two people up to the machine and be like, whoa, you know, we both see red in exactly the same way, you know, and they'll do this, or, you know, they'll do it and be like, whoa, your purple is my red. That's the craziest thing I've ever seen. And it'll be a scientific breakthrough, and maybe, you know, we can say that it'll be the first step to really breaking down all barriers, I suppose, between humankind, and then, you know, the whole sort of sense of cooperation of us as a species, we can come together and unite rather than being divided by our differences or something like that. I don't know. That's perhaps a little bit too idealistic, one might argue, but it's a sort of thing which, you know, wouldn't it be nice? But yeah, again, that's also something that's so far in the future. I don't think I could even comprehend it right now. Like, how would it work? Like, obviously, it's the same sort of thing where when when cars were like first invented, they were like, oh, what about flying, like automations, you know? And then basically what everyone just imagined was a car, but it had wings, and it's just somehow flew. I'm sure I'm like thinking about things in the same way. Be like, oh, you know, of course I can come up with a grand overarching concept, a way to like share literally people's experiences with each other. And I'd be like, how would it work? I don't know, maybe through like neurons and impulses, and simulating things through like electrostimuli, etc., etc. I might, you know, that might just be a sort of like flying car invention, a flying car thought process. And maybe the actual way that these things can be resolved is far different from, you know, how I can even imagine. It's beyond my even scope of imagination or capability or understanding. And that's kind of cool, isn't it? Sorry, I was just thinking that because I was like, I don't know what I'm going to title this video. And then I guess I could title it like question, like, do we feel emotions the same way? Makes it kind of feel like it's going to be like a video essay or something like that. But hey everyone, Dear Darling here. Emotions. Do we feel them all the same way? Do we still make videos? I have no idea. Anyway, I'm going to round this episode off here, I think. So if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares, greatly appreciated. Twitter, Discord down below. Hope you see each other again. But for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye-bye for now.